Welcome back to If You're Fat, Lose Weight, and we are honored to be joined by one of my wife's oldest friends, a titan in the music industry, easily one of my favorite members of the Hewlett 7 Dream Team, more on that in a minute, married to one of the greatest guys in human history, and the only man smart enough to let me be his personal stylist, Lauren Zell and Jason Bell's sister, Kate's mom, the very scrumptious Jaime Hindlin Cash. And if I'm missing any other names, you'll let me know. Welcome to the show. It's a real honor to have you. You look amazing. Thank you for doing this. And you're a very special person. Anything that you want to say to start?
What an introduction. That was probably one of the most epic introductions in life. So thank you.
Well, I meant every word.
Just collapse laughing. That was amazing. And
I meant every word.
Thank you for the kind words.
Yes. Well, thank you for coming on. I know that, we're about to discuss a topic that's sensitive to people. Truth be told, I had, as I've shared, I had a discussion recorded with another very close friend whose story is different than yours. He struggled with addiction. He got sober, and then he decided to start drinking alcohol in moderation. And he thinks that that's the best thing for his life. But that's not the typical addiction story. So we're very happy that you've agreed to come on and share your story with us. Before we get started, I just want to say the Hewlett 7 Dream Team. I would say that one of the members, I'm not going to mention her name, okay? I call her Q. You have leapfrogged ahead of her very much. We try to get her on here to share her political leanings, but she refused. So thank you very much for coming on, and we love you.
Thank you.
Anything to add before we get started here?
No, I'm just happy to be here and to be able to talk about something that is really important to me, and that I hope if someone hears it could shed a little bit of a light on something that is an issue I don't think a lot of people realize is a bigger issue until they do. So
yeah, I think it's prevalent in most people's lives. I mean, I got a lot of feedback on, once I said to people that we were going to cancel the addiction episode we had, everybody's like, why are you doing that? Addiction is really interesting. I have an ex-person close to me who has battled with addiction, and it's really a relevant topic that I'd love to hear stuff about. So I appreciate you doing that, and it really it's prevalent in society today. So I don't know if you're comfortable sharing your basic addiction story with us. Like, when did you? Yeah. What was the issue? What was the issue to start, and when did it become? When did you? Let's say, what was your issue to start? Let's start there.
It started when I was younger because I realized early on in my life that I was addicted to anything I did. So if I loved something, I loved it more than the average person. And I think that started with chocolate chip cookies. I'm using this as I'm serious. I'm using this as an example because I remember when I was like, wow, this is a problem. It's like the only thing I want, and I want a lot of it. And like that was like the first time I was like, it sounds so stupid.
No, it doesn't.
But it's like, that's when I realized, I was like, if I love something this much and I want something this much all the time, what is it going to be like in life, right? Like,
okay, so how old were you when that happened? When you decided you were addicted to chocolate chip cookies?
I don't know, like 7 or 8. No, probably 10. Probably 10 when I was 10. Like, oh my God, like, I like this a lot. And like, I want it all the time, every day.
Every day.
And it's not only like, I'm just using chocolate chip cookies as like an example, but it was like, if I loved something, I loved it so much. If I didn't like it, I put absolutely zero effort into it. And I'm a very black and white person. It's like all or nothing for me. So, school for me was like nothing. Like I was not addicted to that. I was more addicted to like my social life and and chocolate chip cookies and, my extracurricular activities and everything that I did. And music was a big thing that I was just obsessed with. And it's all I did, and all I wanted to like do and listen to. And that's when I was happy. And So I learned at an early age that if I liked something, I liked it a lot more than the normal person. And so, you know, I was a little edgy as a younger
Mhm.
kid. Like I had the best dad in the world, and he was a very strict guy. So it was
Oh,
very
interesting.
like,
I didn't know that. What
yes.
do you mean by that? He was a strict guy.
I mean, he was very strict. Like he had eyes on me at all times. I
Mm.
couldn't, and I say this with so much love. Like I was his firstborn. I was his
Yeah.
daughter. His his first girl. And so he was just very like, you can't do anything. And I think it made me want to do everything that I wasn't supposed to do. So
Got
I
it.
think it started off with me kind of like rebelling in ways like,
Hmm.
and this has nothing to do with chocolate cookies, but I think when I don't know, I just like, he was very strict with me. And I think when I was told I couldn't do stuff, I wanted to do it even more. So, like,
Hmm.
when it came to like, I was never really a big drinker, but when it came to like smoking weed when I was younger, it was like I was one of the first out of my friends that tried it because I was like, oh my God, this is like edgy
Hmm.
and like I'm rebelling and like I also just wanted to escape. I don't know why. I've always kind of had that. If you're an addict, I think a big thing, even if you don't know you are one, when you're younger, you just don't want to like feel certain things. And I didn't know that at the time, but it started with weed when I was like 15 years old or 14. I was like one of the first people.
Okay, so
At
so when you're smoking weed the first time, you're in eighth grade or ninth grade or sometime around there. Do you
ninth,
remember?
ninth grade.
Ninth
So
grade
however
at
old that,
high school. Okay,
yeah. Or
and it's
maybe
an
end of eighth grade.
okay.
And so, I liked it and I liked it a lot. So it's like the second I tried it, it was everything, and then my whole excuse to my parents was like, if they smelled me or if they like knew that I had been a little high or whatever, like I was like, at least I'm not like the other people that I know, not actually none of my friends, none of the dream team, more
The dream
like
team. Yeah.
people that I had heard of, like that were our age that were doing like crazier things. I was
Hmm.
like, well, mom and dad, at least I'm like not partying and drinking a lot of alcohol and all this
Right.
stuff. Like I always used it as like, at least I'm not doing that. But I don't think I realized at the age that like I was just doing it a lot. Like I would skip
Hmm.
school, I would do it, and I don't think that was normal for someone who grew up where I grew up, the way I grew up with such a strict parents. My mom was definitely more chill, but
Your mom's a great lady,
still
Sandy. Yes, she's very
she's a great
chill. She's
lady.
one of my
But
faves. Yeah.
she's the best. But she was more like she deferred to my dad, and I rebelled so much that I feel like sometimes she felt like she probably lost control over me.
Mm.
But yeah, it started with that, and it became like a thing all throughout high school. And I was like, well, I'm just smoking weed. It's normal.
All right, so you were just smoking weed in high school, basically.
Yeah,
Were
yeah.
you
I wasn't.
drinking? Were you
Yeah, I was
drinking?
drinking, but like I don't really like alcohol. Like I don't
Right.
like alcohol. And so it was more that, and then I went into college and I started smoking even more weed, and it was like, again, I was like, weed is weed. Like it's not a big deal. It's
Well, especially these days. I mean, when you said you were 15, so that's like 23 years ago. I mean, it was a different time then, obviously.
yeah.
But weed is still, most people, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know very many people, if any people, that have gone to rehab for smoking weed.
There are
You,
some because I think if it gets in the way of your life and the way you're able to function, there are some people that do go for that. I don't. I
yeah.
just think it's so normalized. But I think that if you take it a step too far, it's not normal anymore because if it gets in the way of your life, and it can,
Right, of course. Well, yeah, sure. I mean, we've all
you know,
seen, friends who would just smoke weed all day and sit and eat and watch
yeah,
TV, but it's
yeah,
hard. It seems to me, at least for the people that I know, that I mean, aside from being at times preventative from achieving things, I mean, it's pretty
yep.
harmless. You're not, going out and just hurting yourself most of the time, physically hurting others, physically, that
No,
kind of thing. Yeah.
it's a more normal thing.
Right.
But
Okay.
if it gets in the way of you being able to function,
Right. Of
or
course.
and
Okay.
there are a lot of people who can function and smoke weed.
Of
I'm not one
course.
of them, and there are a
Yeah.
lot of people who are not one of them. So there are definitely people who when I went to treatment when I was younger, I was there with people that were just there for weed. So like it is a thing. So, you know, little bit of, you know, addiction runs in my family. My uncle is an addict. I think it was always something that like I was very sensitive to, even though I didn't realize I was doing it. I knew my dad had a really hard time with his brother. And so I was like, I'm never going to get like that. I was like, I'm never going to get like that because I cannot do that to my dad. And, you know, I go to college and, you know, a lot of people are doing some other things. And then I start judging them because I was really sensitive to it because of my uncle.
Oh, interesting.
And so I'll never do anything except for smoke weed. Like those people that do other things are disgusting. And so the first 3 years of my college career or experience, it was really just smoking weed. And then, you know, towards the end of college, I would say it was like end of junior year, beginning of senior year, I kind of had a freak out. I was like, I'm afraid to grow up. I don't want to go into the real world. I was like, I'm going to be here in college for one more year. And I just, something in me switched where it was like, let's go, let's party. And I really don't know what the catalyst was for that. I can't remember exactly what it was. All I know is that it went from just smoking weed to doing other things pretty quickly and then doing a lot of it. And I don't want to talk too much about what that one thing was.
Sure. We'll be respectful.
But it was like, I tried it one day and then that was game
You're
over.
off to the races. Okay, so
And
hold on. Let's stop for a second and let's just say, okay, so you went to college at Syracuse, right?
Yes.
Okay. And drugs, for people who don't know, drugs are very prevalent there. It's known as a drug school.
It's a party school. And like, I mean, I survived the first few years just being a pothead, I'm saying just being a pothead.
No, like, I mean, honestly, that's surprising.
Yes.
Every single person that I know that went there has done other drugs besides pot. Every single one. Now, I almost ended up there because I tried to get into the Newhouse School of Communications because, as you can tell, I should have been a sports broadcaster because my dulcet tones, right? But I didn't get in, and then I went to Michigan and did – you know, I did all the partying that I would have done in Syracuse. I did that at Michigan.
I mean, they both had it. They
both had it. But, okay. So your senior year, senior year was also a very tough year for me. I know it was a very tough year for a lot of people where you're kind of like looking, everybody's kind of told you how great college is. Whatever your experience was in college, you understand that you really don't have any responsibility, especially senior year. You're kind of at the end, you're probably taking less classes and you're probably like, you know, this is the last semester of my senior year. Next year, I'm going to be in the city, you know, working, which is horrid, you know,
which is horrid.
So you might like, I'm going to be off my parents' dime. Yeah.
I was like, oh my God. And like, I was going through some other personal stuff that like, I just wanted to run away and numb myself and just party. I was like, I've not partied the whatever. For whatever justification I had in my head, I was like, I have not partied in college. So I'm going to like do that now. And it was also to like numb like the fear of, you know, graduating and going into the real world. I was very scared. I didn't have a job lined up. I knew I wanted to work in the music business and I hadn't had anything figured out yet. And so I was just scared and I kind of was like, you know what, let's just like rage while we're here and then we'll figure the rest out. And so that turned into like becoming my life. And I partied a lot. And every day on the weekdays, not like it was a weekend thing, like every day. And so it went from 0 to 100 very quickly. And that's when I was like, yeah, I remember the cookie analogy. Like if I'm going to like something so much, I'm going to do it all the time. And that's exactly what happened. And which is why I was afraid to try other things. And then when I did it, it was off to the races. Fast forward, I graduate college. I get freaked out. You know, I break up with a boyfriend that I thought I was going to marry. Like a lot of things like happened where I was like, it was just a lot of life changes. And then I graduated college and like a month after, two of my grandparents died a day apart, which was extremely traumatic. And like, and then again, kept numbing myself. And then I was like, I don't want to move to New York. I feel like I want to like go away somewhere else. Los Angeles was always somewhere that I dreamed of living, but I didn't think it was actually possible. And also, like, I guess when you're in your addiction, like a big thing that people reference is like a geographical move. Like, oh, if I move somewhere, I'll stop doing this. So it was another thing that's like a big thing, like, you know, that it's in AA, it's like, you know, the geography. It's like, oh, if I leave this town, I won't do this anymore. So for me, I was like, I got to get out of here. I got to get a fresh start. I got to go to Los Angeles, pursue my dream of working in the music business, and I'm not going to party anymore. So that was absolutely not the case. I actually went to Los Angeles, got an internship, and then, you know, turned that into a job in like 6 months while still spiraling with an addiction that was pretty out of control. But I showed up for work. I was barely functioning, but I did it, you know, and I had
what was your job? What was your job that you were interning?
I started as an intern at Warner Brother Records in the new media department, which now is like the social media, or like, you know, it was called new media because this was like in 2007, and it was at Warner Brother Records, and I was in charge of people's MySpace pages and making sure that they were like updated and, you know, people were interacting. Cool. Exactly. Yeah. And what I really wanted to do always was A&R, which is artist and repertoire. That's the term for it, but it's really just like, you know, working with artists, helping, you know, figure out their records they're making, connect them with the right people, be a part of like making music. And so the new media department internship, I was there, and then I finagled my way somehow into the A&R department. And so I was an intern there for a little bit, and then I got hired to be the president's assistant of the label.
Wow.
And so I was his assistant while in a very deep stage of my addiction. And, you know, he actually had a lot of friends that were recovering addicts. And so I knew that. And so I had an experience when it was my 1 year into the job, and I went to Coachella, and it was like my rock bottom. And I had to call my boss and be like, listen, I'm just gonna be honest with you. Like, I know some of your best friends are recovering addicts. Like, I have a problem and I need to go get help. And I feel like if you were in any other industry, I don't know, like I think it's, you know,
it's probably more widespread than you think, but I would say the music industry is, I would say,
So he was so understanding, and I went away to treatment for 3 months. Wow. And I came back, and he let me keep my job. And wow. I am forever grateful for him. He ended up passing away a few years ago, and like, he is the first person who ever taught me about the music business, and also was like a big champion of mine and supported me through the hardest time in my life. So
that's amazing that he let you keep your job. I mean, what an amazing guy. How long had you been working there?
A year.
When you decided to go to rehab, and that was including the internship, or just for him for a year, and then including. Okay.
No, a little under a year for him. Yeah.
Okay, so let's call it. You've been working there a year and a half, year and 3 months, something in that area before you go to rehab. Okay.
And I knew his best friend. I knew his best friend was sober. So like, who was also a very big producer. That is one of the first people that helped me get sober.
Sober, that's terminology for somebody who is a recovering addict who's been sober for X amount of years. Okay.
So he was very sensitive to it. So he understood.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about Coachella and the impetus for you deciding that you needed to get help?
I ended up not even going to the festival and just staying at a house partying way too much and staying up later than everyone else. It was just me and one other person at the end. And I was like, I had this like epiphany. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I was like, something's not right. Like, I didn't even make it to the festival. I was just partying. And I was like a shell of a human being. And I was like, a few days before, my good friend that I actually went to Syracuse with, who had been in the program in recovery, told me, he was like, just so you know, when you get back from Coachella, you're going to treatment. I was like, okay. And so I had that voice in my head where I knew that something was really wrong, but it was just like me being one of the last people awake, one of the nights I was there, not even making it to the festival, staying up partying. I was like, this has got to end. So I called my parents, which was probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do, and admit, like, I have a problem and I need help. And my friend that had told me that he thought I needed help, I called him and he came and picked me up and helped me get into treatment. And
Wow.
yeah, I'm forever grateful for him. He's my Eskimo. That's what they
Hey.
call the person who got you sober. So he helped me. I went to treatment for 3 months. I came out like a fish out of water. I was like, you know what? And for me, like, alcohol was never really a thing for me. So I was like, I didn't realize that, like, if you were going to be sober, you had to abstain from everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, well, I never had a problem with alcohol, so whatever. I guess I have to be sober. Fast forward a few, like 6 months, I guess, and then I found myself having a glass of wine, which led to me going back into the, hamster wheel of what I had just spent a long time fixing. And I had to go into an outpatient treatment center and a sober living because it got out of control again.
So you started using again.
Mm-hmm. I did. I relapsed. And so I think that is what taught me, like, okay, addiction is addiction. Like, maybe alcohol wasn't my thing, but it started leading to other things. So no matter what, like, I have to just refrain, right? Fast forward a year. I stay sober for, like, not even a year, 9 months. I'm at a new job because my boss had gotten laid off and everybody lost their job. I'm at a new job. And I started using again. And this time it escalated. Every time you do it, it escalates way quicker. Like, if you relapse, it just gets worse much quicker. You kind of pick up where you left off, know? So this time it was a matter of weeks. And I was like, I had the worst bottom I've ever had. I ended up in a really bad place. I was pretty scared for my life. And that's when I was like, I cannot do this anymore. I cannot do this to myself. I cannot do this to my family. It is over. Like, over. Okay? And so at the time, I had also worked this new job. My boss was sober. So every day he would leave for AA meetings at noon. Every day on the dot, I was his assistant. So it's like, it was always around me in the music business. And it was like a sign. Like, I had people in my life that were always sober.
That's good, honestly. Yeah.
Yes. But this time I didn't go to rehab. I just did it on my own. And so that was my last rock bottom was in July. It was July 17th of 2010.
Wow. Remember the date.
And July 18th, I never picked up anything ever again.
Okay.
That was it. And that was almost 13 years ago.
Well, congratulations on being
Thank
sober
you.
for 12 and a half years, going on almost 13. That's amazing. Let's go back. I want to ask some questions. Let's go back to the first time you went to rehab. And obviously, whatever you're not comfortable sharing, that's fine. So when you say you went to rehab, for us uninformed, you went away for 3 months. Does that mean you went and lived somewhere for 3 months in a rehab facility?
Yeah,
and
I did.
What is your day like in a rehab facility?
Honestly, it was amazing. There are some days where I'm like, I just want to go back, not for addiction, but just for, like, taking care of myself, just to, like, escape. It's just all about self-care. It's about, you wake up, they have some sort of, and it just depends on where you go. But most places have, like, you try and work out some way. You incorporate exercise into your day. You start your day with prayer and gratitude groups where it's like, I'm grateful for this. This is the stuff in my life that I have gratitude for, instead of looking at all the negative stuff. Eating healthy meals. Then you start therapy all day. Like, you're in like a family therapy group. You're in a trauma therapy group. You're in a group therapy. You're in different therapy groups where you kind of just dig deep into, like, why you got here in the first place, which I had never really done that work. I went to a therapist my whole life, but, like, not like this. This is, like, intensive therapy. But it also, incorporates, like, there are some places that incorporate art into, into recovery and expressing yourself that way. I think for me, the most important thing was connecting with other people that understood how I felt and that I could talk to, that went through the same exact thing, and I felt like I wasn't alone.
So you're talking about peers in there, or are you talking about counselors?
Peers in there, people I met from all walks of life.
Okay.
My roommate the first night was a 65-year-old woman. And I was like, get me out of here. I was like, what the hell was going on? What has my life come to? And I'm like, and she ended up being like a good friend of mine. And like, it's all walks of life. So it's like, we all shared our stories. And I think that really helped me realize, like, cause I felt so alone. I felt like no one, I couldn't relate to my friends. I couldn't relate to anyone. And then I had this group of people there that made me feel very like that I wasn't alone, you know?
Got it. Okay. So you're in there for 3 months. Is that right? That's a long time. Is that a long, I mean, it sounds long time to me. Is that a long time? Yeah. Right. So is that a long time to be there in a program if you're there or no?
A normal amount of time is like a month, but a month wasn't long enough for me. It was like, I had just started scratching the surface in a month. And there was a part towards the end where I moved out to like a house, like on the side of the property where I could like come and go. I just had to like check in and like had someone kind of like watching, you know, when I came and when I went and all that stuff. But it felt very safe, and it felt like I had a chance to finally like just dive into all the stuff that I had been avoiding my whole life. So 3 months, it did feel long, but it actually like was amazing. It was amazing. And I made a lot of friends that are still people I keep in touch with, you know, and I learned a lot. I learned gratitude. And I think the silver lining of like being an addict is like, there's so much that is like, that they shine a light on when you're in the program and AA and all that stuff, that it's like free therapy. Like when you go to AA meetings, it's like, that's free. You can go and you talk about things that like, you don't even talk about in therapy. You just share life stories, and you share like a bond with people about things that like you learn to really express gratitude more than like hate everything. And I think that is amazing, because that's what rehab and AA and the program really instilled in you.
So that sounds like what spoke to you was the gratitude portion. Like, I feel like, you know, you talk about chocolate chip cookies, you know, I think people, I know, you know, most people in my life are addicted to something, you know, for me, and I don't want to sound this could sound douchey. It's not, but I'm addicted to the mental release of exercising every single day. If I don't exercise, yeah, I mean, sure. But if I don't exercise, like, it's great when I do exercise, but the days that I don't exercise, I'm not my best self. I'm not my best father. I'm not my best husband, all of those things. And I'm aware of it as it's happening in real life. But my thought process is different. So did you learn about that in rehab? I always thought about, right. So like, I always thought it's interesting that some people are addicted to, so, you know, people can get, you know, I've experimented with different things. I don't have an addiction for any stimulant. You know, I drink alcohol socially. I don't need it. I don't, you know, so it's like, there are different things that people are addicted to. I don't understand the psychology or the biology of that. I don't know if there's anything you can share with us about that, if you know anything, or maybe you don't learn about that.
I think you're either an addict or you're not. Like, I feel like, listen, if you're addicted to working out, you're lucky. And if you're not addicted to other things, but you're addicted to only that, then you're just probably not an addict, right?
Right.
If you're an addict, I think you're addicted to anything you do. And there's a lot of like swapping out addictions once you give one up for another addiction. So for me, mine became work. And so it's like, you know, you trade addictions, right? Maybe it's a healthier addiction, even though sometimes for a while in my life it wasn't healthy, because all I did, I mean, still all I do is work, but I had no balance in my life. And all I did was work, because that was numbing me from a lot of trauma that I had, which is another part of my story. There's a lot of layers to this, but, you know, I changed addictions to work. I wish it was working out. I actually started getting addicted to that more this year. And when I don't work out, I don't feel good. It's like I need it. But I do think, you're either an addict or you're not. And if you have one thing you're addicted to, that's great. But most addicts, I feel, are just They're addicted to everything they do. So the fact that you can party and just, call it a day and just live the rest of your week normal, that's great. Not the case for a lot of people.
Right. Not the case for a lot of other people, but definitely the case for some people, and a lot of people can just
and those are called
drink and
normies.
whatever. Right.
In AA, those people are called normies.
Normies. Cool.
They're the term for you guys. I am not a normie. I am fully aware of what I am, of the fact that I am an addict, and I wear it with pride more than anything. Like, in the beginning, it was really hard for me because I was like, I feel different from everyone else, which is why treatment was helpful, because I finally felt I had a community that understood me. And so, fast forward to really the time that I got sober for real, I met people in AA that became some of my best friends. And I was still young in Los Angeles. I was 26 years old, 38 now.
You look good though. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's because I'm sober. No, just kidding. I still eat like shit. But I made some of the closest friends in my life in the program, and being in the community, especially in Los Angeles, it's like, it's more normal there than not. So what I did when I got sober the final time, I didn't go to treatment anymore. There was no more treatment to go to. It was like, I tried that. I knew what I had to do. It was like, I know the formula. I just have to do it. And I have to really use my willpower and not cave in and not have a glass of wine, right? Because the glass of wine leads to everything else.
Whatever.
So what I did was I was working for the guy who was sober now. So again, another boss that had a connection to the program and addiction. And I worked, and then I just went to meetings all the time, AA meetings, and I built a community for myself. Instead of going out for the first years of my sobriety, I would go to the movies, or I would go to AA meetings, or dinners with friends that were sober. And that's what kept me going in the beginning. And it's crazy because about 9 months into me really being sober, my father passed away, which is the obvious, you're obviously going to relapse when something like that happens. So I didn't, and I didn't because I was like, I cannot do this to him. I cannot do this to my mother. I cannot do this to my sister. I mean, I can't do it to myself, which is why you have to do it for yourself if you want to be sober. But I could not do it to my family. I was like, we lost my dad. He was so proud of me. I was 9 months sober, and he was like, I cannot believe you've made it this long. I mean, he was just very proud of me. And so I was like, I'm going to honor that. And, I'm going to change my life. And I did. And the hardest time in my life was that, well, one of the hardest times, but was definitely losing my father. And I did not pick up or use or anything. I went to his funeral, and usually people are taking Xanax to calm down. It's something like that. I fully white knuckled it and just felt every emotion when I wanted to run away so badly. And it was really, really hard. And it's still really hard. It's like trauma that I kind of suppressed or repressed or whatever, kind of kept in me. And what I did was I went back to work a month later. And then from that moment on, work was my everything. And it saved
your salvation.
It saved me. It saved me. And so I also did it because I knew I would make him proud. I knew that staying sober would make him proud, but it would make me proud,
Well, okay. First of all, Kevin Zellick, your dad, great guy. I knew him. I was at that funeral. It was one of the saddest things ever. His death was a very sad thing in my life, and I didn't know him. He wasn't my dad, obviously, but I didn't know him as well as my in-laws and my wife, and you guys all grew up together, and it was a terrible tragedy. And he's one of the, he was one of the universally loved men, or men or people. We'll put it that way. We don't need to be gender specific, which is a real testament. Everywhere you go, people said nice things about him, and and
I feel very lucky that was my dad.
Yeah, and
I wanted proud.
Yeah, and it's all of these stories are at the end of the day, we all have challenges in our life, and it takes personal responsibility at the end of the day. So what you really said resonates to me. You had all the tools that you needed to be sober, stay sober, and be sober through the challenges. And you had to do
Oh
it
yeah.
like challenging things in life, and you had to do it for yourself. Sure, you could want to do it for others, but at the end of the day, like, you know, I can want success for my kids. I can want my son Oliver to play basketball, but at the end of the day, he doesn't want to play. So what can I do?
You can't
You
do
know,
it.
at the end, you can't do anything. And he's 5,
Especially,
right?
yeah. I
And
want
it's
my
not
daughter to go
addiction.
to dance.
Yeah,
I
right.
want my daughter to go dance. She won't go to dance. I can't force her to do anything.
Right.
You know, and I remember, like, as amazing as my father is and was, he wanted me to be a certain way, and I fought that. You know, so I feel like with any of our kids, we kind of got to just let them do their thing, right? I think I learned that I was a big rebel because I was like, you know, you're going to be like this, you're going to be like this, whatever it was. But it ended up working out fine. To just fast forward through a few more things, like, so my dad died, I stayed sober, threw myself into work. Started really, like, you know, excelling in my career and making moves. You know, it was stagnant for a while because I was getting sober and I was relapsing and getting sober. And so I really started, like, putting everything into my job and my career because it was the only thing that I ever dreamed of, that, like, I was like, I want to work in the music business. I want to be successful in the music business. I want to have, obviously, a husband, a family, everything. But work for me, like, it was and is my passion. So, you know, fast forward, I do that. I start making, you know, moves in my career. And then I had 2 more traumas that were absolutely horrible. And I honestly don't know which one was worse. I have 3 traumas in my life that happened that shook me to my core. And they all happened when I was sober. So it was my dad. And then about 3 years later, I lost a baby when I was 6 months pregnant. Which is extremely traumatic. Probably as a woman, like, I mean, it messes with you more than you would ever anyone would ever be able to understand unless they've been through it. And again, I don't really have many people in my life that I know that have been through it. So the ones that I do know, the few, I stay very close to. And then I stayed sober through that. And then when I had my daughter, I had heart failure. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, when, God, are you going to stop testing me? Like, when is this just going to stop, you know? And I stayed sober through that. And unfortunately, what I did do always, not unfortunately, but I say unfortunately because it was definitely in an unhealthy way, is I threw myself back into work. And it kept me from going down the other path, right? And so I look at my life now and, like, I've built a great life. I love my family so much. I love my husband. I love my daughter. You know, I'm not really able to have kids myself anymore. And that's another thing that I can't really grasp yet. And it's something that makes me very sad every day. But am I going to drink over it? No. Am I going to just, you know, say fuck it and just do what I did in the past when I was younger, when I wasn't sober, and all the things I was using over were nothing compared to the real life traumas. I was using over, like, a boy that didn't like me, or, like, I mean, it was the stupidest thing ever. And then I got hit with, like, real stuff and I didn't drink. It was like, or I didn't, you know, do anything. It was the craziest thing, because usually when people are going through really hard times in their life, that's when they're like, I give up, you know? So I somehow stayed sober through all of this. And, I think it just goes to show you that, like, I mean, first of all, your will has to be very strong, right? Like, you have to just want to do it. You know, it's very hard for me sometimes. Like, so just, again, beginning, I was very, like, I went to movies, I went to AA meetings, that's it. A few years into my sobriety, I was able to go out again and start having fun and go out with my sober friends and go to clubs and be like, I'm having fun sober. Now I'm like, especially after the traumas around, like, the pregnancies and birth and stuff, I became a little bit more of an introvert. And going out for me is now, like, I'll go for a little bit and then I'll come home, because it's a little hard now. Yeah, it ebbs and flows. It goes in, you know, some days are easier and some days are harder. But what I know is, like, I just can't do it, you know. And I think a lot of people are like, you know, screw it. I can't deal with what's going on in my life. And it's like, if you stay sober, and I don't mean to sound like I'm preaching, because I don't want to, but so many beautiful things come from it, because it's way worse when you're not. It's way darker.
Well, it's amazing to still have that perspective. Like, I mean, it's really on the top of your brain. I can see that, and anybody listening to this can see this, but even people that know you can see that. You know, it's always, you know, I mean, you do leave early places.
I do.
And
I feel weird, but I
actually respect you for it. You know, if I was you, and it was something that was a problem for me and I was still intrigued by it, it would be impossible to even go. So I commend you for going, and I commend you for leaving early. And, you know, you get a night's sleep, which is at the end of the day at our age, so much better.
So much better. I'm like, I got 6 hours of sleep last night because of my jet lag, and I'm like not functioning today. And I'm like, oh my God, if I was hungover, like I wouldn't even be able to like do anything. So yes, I go because I don't want to miss times with my friends, but I know when it's time for me to just like, you know what?
Those aren't really the times to that's not the you don't derive meaning out of those. Okay. Okay. Listen, we have 11 minutes. I want to be respectful of your time. A couple things that you said that I just want clarification on out of my own curiosity. So the first time you relapsed, you said you went to an outpatient facility. Yeah. How long were you there, and what does that entail?
I was there for 2 months. It entailed like it was, and I lived in a sober living while I went there. So it wasn't like being in a rehab, like where you don't leave. It was like I was in a sober living house where you come and go, and you go to your outpatient treatment, which is like, you know, it's like an office building, and it's the same thing as inpatient, but just you go to these things and then you leave. But then I would go back to like a sober living house where, you know.
So are you in rehab all day, or are you working still? And then going
I had to take some time off.
So you took time, and then you were in the program all day, and then
all day. So it was like if I would leave my outpatient program in between going back to my sober living house, I would go to a meeting. So my whole day was just focused around like recovery. Got it.
Okay. So it's very similar, but a couple.
But not like you're living in a bed there.
Right. Got it.
You have a little more freedom.
Got it. And then your second relapse, you decided on your own, I don't need to go anywhere else. I'm going to do this on my own.
Yeah.
After your second relapse.
Yeah. I was like, I know what it is. I know I'm either going to go to an inpatient place or I'm going to go, like I've done it, you know, like I know exactly what this is going to be again.
Right.
I'm just going to do this on my own.
Right. Okay.
And I did it on my own.
Yeah. It's amazing.
I had the tools.
Right. You know, I don't want to go pry too much. You know, you met your husband, who's a great guy, who we mentioned in the intro. Also works in the same music industry as you. You met your husband he's also sober, and you met him where did you meet him?
Oh, I met him in the music business. I met him at my job the job that actually really ended up changing my life is where I met him. He was my boss had signed him, and I was put on him to do his calendar and like make sure he got to like his writing sessions. And so that's how I met him. He was a writer that my boss signed to a publishing company that I started working at when I was 9 months sober. And because I left the other job because I hated it. I worked at an agency. The guy who was sober, that was my boss. It was at a touring agency, and I did not want to do that. And I left to be in the creative space in A&R. And sorry, long-winded.
No, yeah.
And my husband was signed there. And so my boss was like, here are the calendars that you're going to be in charge of. There's this guy, Jay Cash, and then, named like 5 other people. And you're responsible for making sure they have their sessions in their calendar. They get to where they're going. You're just their person. And so, yeah, we started working together, and then it was like 4 years after that we ended up even starting to date.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. Yeah. And was he when you guys started dating, he was sober, correct?
No, he was not.
He was not.
No. Okay. So, I never made him get sober. I think he just kind of followed by example. Like, I think he realized, like, on his own that he had his own stuff he had to get, right. And because you can't be like, oh, I'm going to like, you know, I will only date you or only like be with you if you get sober. If you do that to someone, it's not going to work because they have to want it. So the great thing that happened with him was that he realized it on his own. He like saw me like not drinking or doing anything while he was like partying. And he was like, I think he was kind of like, damn, like if I want to be with this girl, like I gotta get my shit together, because it just wasn't going to work. And so I never gave him an ultimatum ever. And I think that's what worked, because if I would have been like, you have to do this, like he would have been like, okay, yeah, leave me alone. You're annoying. That's not how it happened. Right. He came to me and was like, I want to do this. And I was like, oh my God, I thought you'd never say it, but that's how it has to happen. You cannot force someone to get sober.
And you must have been very supportive of him and
beyond
helped him.
I was so proud of him and supportive. And like, it's funny because when, you know, when he got sober, he was like, all we would do was go to movies, you know, all we would do. Like as a new couple, like we would just go to the movies, or we would just hang out with friends, like at home. Like it was very low key early, you know, in our relationship, which is when he got sober. And so, yeah, it was not your normal, like starting to date someone. Like, you know, we had a very special connection there with that. But the only reason it worked is because I didn't, you know, put a gun to his head and say, you have to do this. I was like, you do you figure it out.
So how long has he been sober? Do you know the day, or do you know the approximation?
He hasn't drank in about 10 years.
Wow. And you've been sober for 12 and a half. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, you know, I really appreciate you sharing.
Of course. It's so important.
Yes. It's so important. Is there anything else that you feel like is important to say through your journey, or anything else generally? I mean, we talked about what you currently are like,
Grandma,
you know, in social settings,
Grandma, just call it what it is. But the only thing, this is like my thing always, is like, nothing is going to kill you. Like your feelings will not kill you. Like I have definitely been through a lot of shit in my life, and like they didn't kill me. What would have killed me is like not being sober. And so like your feelings are your feelings, and they suck to feel them. But at the worst times in your life, like you're way more like screwed if you know, do drugs and maybe like screw yourself there, than like just fighting through the feelings as hard as they are and just like staying clean. If you want that, if you're someone who like can't control it, you know, your feelings will not kill you is like my main thing. They'll drive you crazy. And there are outlets there are outlets to work through them. Like I'm very into yoga, very into that. Like that saved my life for sure. Like that's therapy for me, you know? I'm very into like, you know, body healing type weird stuff. That helps me, you know, but like your feelings won't kill you. They just won't. And I think people are scared of feeling things. And, yeah, I mean, I'm still addicted to work. We're not fixed there yet. That's not
we're all work in progress, but listen, I appreciate you sharing. And you know what? This will resonate with people, and somebody will listen to this and pass it on to somebody who needs to hear it. And that's why it's important. Yeah. And that's why it's important that's why it's important to have these conversations, I think. You never know who you're going to impact. So
100% why I did this. And I don't really talk about this much, but I think it's important for people to hear, because I don't think they realize until they maybe hear it from someone else. You know, I know that I've listened to podcasts, and when I've heard something a certain way, it's resonated with me and been like, oh my God, like a light bulb went off, you know? And so
100%.
Addiction is everywhere. It's very prevalent in just the world, especially after all the stuff that we all have been through with the last few years. Like, I feel like a lot of people fell into very dark places. Oh, yeah. I feel like I've been noticing that a lot more than normal. And I think it's important for someone to hear this and to just be like, oh my God, that really like spoke to me. I hope that's what it does, because, you know, that's how I stay sober, is by helping other people.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Jamie, for your time. And, you know, we had a
Thank
hard
you,
stop
Joel.
in 2 minutes. You're the best.
You're the
And,
best. And thank you for having me. And I love you. And now you know my whole life story.
Well, it's good to hear. I didn't know a lot of this, so I appreciate you being so open and honest. And you know, we'll see how it goes. But maybe we'll have you back on to talk about you know, Rihanna's performance last night at the Super Bowl, pregnant.
I am shook. I am obsessed. I cannot stop thinking about it. I'm obsessed. But anytime you want to talk music, I'm here, because that's a whole other thing.
That is a whole other thing, which I know nothing about. But you're the best. Love you, and thanks for your time.
You.
And we'll catch you later. All right. Thanks, Jamie.